At Bush Memorial Stadium in St. Louis, 33 years ago today, fans witnessed one of the most remarkable plays ever seen. This is the story of the man behind the play, how he got there, and his all-time great season that followed. Kevin Mitchell was on his way home. He was on his way to play for the Padres that he rooted for growing up. He hated leaving New York, but this was about the next best thing. He lived near his family and friends, and they always showed up to the ballpark. He also had an everyday role as the team's starting third baseman, whereas he would have remained in the utility role with the Mets. In a vacuum, it was a great fit. But the differences between the two clubhouses were like night and day. He knew the Friars weren't as good as the Mets, but going from a 108-win championship season to a 6-25 start just can't be any fun. The Padres didn't have the swag, the talent, or the personality that made Kevin love Queens so much, and this reflected in his play. On the 4th of July, exactly halfway through the Padres season, he was slugging below .400 with just 7 home runs. He'd regressed in nearly every aspect at the plate, and although he was a good defender at third, he was becoming a distraction off the field. Well, not so much him, but his friends, some of whom were gang affiliated, were always at the ballpark, and the Padres weren't super ecstatic about that. Mitchell also admitted that he was pressing at the plate to perform, knowing that he had an audience of friends and family coming out in droves just to see him. San Diego gave up a really good player in Kevin McReynolds to acquire Mitchell, but it was apparent that this just wasn't working out. So on the 4th of July, Mitchell was traded for the second time in 8 months. His value at the time had sunk so low that he was thrown into this trade as the final piece. He remained in the NL West and within the state, moving about 500 miles north to San Francisco with teammates Dave Dravecky and Craig Lefferts, and his presence was felt immediately in the Bay. After his 4th of July game, ironically in Montreal, he got on a flight to Chicago to face off against the Cubs the next day for his new team. He had one of his best games of the year, homering twice and reaching base 4 times in the victory. He then played a doubleheader in Pittsburgh the next day before playing every inning of 4 straight extra inning games in Pittsburgh and St. Louis. This is an absolutely grueling week of games, but it may have been just what he needed to get out of his own head at the plate. He absolutely tore the cover off the ball the rest of the way, homering 11 times and finishing with a 300, 400, 500 triple slash during his last 53 games of the year. Before the trade, the Giants were a game below 500, but after the trade, they went on a 51-32 tear, securing the number 1 spot in the West, 25 games ahead of the last place Padres. Kevin was going for his second straight pennant, and it would have been something if he met up with his former team in the NLCS, but the Mets got off to a lethargic start and couldn't quite close the gap on the Cardinals. St. Louis, on the other hand, was on fire during the first half and slowed down near the end of the year. They really weren't an imposing team like the Mets, and even though they were the betting favorites in the series, the Giants certainly didn't feel like underdogs. After the Game 1 defeat, the Giants stole home field advantage during Game 2. Dravecky, the main piece in the trade with the Padres, spun a complete game 2-hit shutout, but the Cardinals swiftly reclaimed the upper hand after a rare implosion by Giants reliever Don Robinson in Game 3. Mitchell finally made an impact in Game 4, going 2 for 4 and scoring on a game-changing Jeffrey Leonard homer. In the pivotal Game 5, Mitchell came to play, evening the score in the first with an RBI single and again in the third with a solo shot. The Giants pulled away in the fourth and took the series lead, needing just one more victory in St. Louis for their first pennant since JFK was in office. In Game 6, Dravecky and Robinson combined for an incredible effort on the mound, but the Giants' bats couldn't muster a single run. Mitchell and the Giants hadn't hit well away from home all series, and Game 7 was much the same. The Cardinals put away the series by the bottom of the 6th inning when they took a 6-0 lead. The disappointing end to the Giants' 1987 playoff run carried over into 1988. Mitchell had a pretty solid year at the plate, but he felt the effects of the cavernous candlestick outfield. His power output was way down on the year, finishing with 19 homers in a full season of play compared to the 16 he hit in just over 60 games with the Giants last year. Young shortstop Matt Williams shifted over to third in the second half, which moved Mitchell to left field for the last 2 months, where he struggled a bit as the team floundered down the stretch. It should be pretty clear at this point how Kevin's play correlated with him and his team's morale. When he was having fun with the Mets and the streaking Giants, he was hitting. When he was on the last place Padres team and a Giants team without a realistic shot at the division, he slowed down. All in all, it was the worst ball he'd played at the major league level, and it felt like a lost season for both him and the Giants. While back home for winter, a few things happened. First of all, Kevin apparently joined a local slow-pitch softball league and averaged 3 homers a game. I'm not sure how true this is, but that's how Kevin tells it. It was probably a league of like washed-up high school and college players going out for a light jog and some morning beers. That's like, I don't know, Ramon Laureano showing up to your league and dominating. But beyond kicking ass in softball, Kevin made a very consequential choice. His granny finally convinced him, after years of trying, to get contact lenses. When the baseball season began, it was like he was still seeing softballs. In his first season with good eyesight, Kevin had the year of his life. He was the cleanup hitter for the All-Star team right after teammate Will Clark. The tandem carried an otherwise mediocre lineup to the division crown. Nobody else on the roster had an OPS above 750. Kevin Mitchell's was 1023. In one of the most pitcher-friendly parks in baseball, Mitchell hit 47 homers and led MLB in OPS. If he had some more protection, the free swinger probably would have had 50 big flies. But he also led the league with 32 intentional walks. This culminated in the 5th highest OPS plus in NL history since integration. This is a man who hadn't even played organized ball a decade prior, and he put up one of the most dominant offensive seasons in league history. He only trailed the very top seasons from Mike Schmidt, Hank Aaron, Stan Musial, and Willie McCovey. Even Willie Mays never hit quite this well in a season. He earned all but 4 first-place MVP votes, with 3 of those 4 going to Clark, who finished second. They were easily the scariest tandem of hitters in all of baseball, but even though he was the most intimidating bat in the entire league with some of the best stats in NL history, his most memorable moment of the season came in left field. On April 26th, Kevin Mitchell made his career-defining play.
And that's sliced to left field, and it's another chance for Mitchell, and he makes a barehanded catch!
In my entire life, I've never seen that happen.
Giants writer Grant Brisbee references this as a play that went prehistorically viral, something that was on all the baseball highlight tapes and all the morning sports shows for years. This was one of the most well-known plays before social media. But what is it that makes it so compelling? I don't think it's just a barehanded catch. We've seen a few of those before. He makes a bad read on the ball off of Ozzie Smith's bat. He'd only played about 100 games in left field up to this point, and it was pretty obvious that he was no expert. But he doesn't panic and get his feet tangled. He doesn't throw up his glove in a damned effort. He doesn't leap or dive for the ball. No. He instead makes a play that no human has ever tried to make in the 120-year history of this game. On April 26, 1989, Kevin Mitchell was superhuman. The play truly sums Kevin up as both a player and a person. He didn't make the play the right way, he made it his way. Doing things his way is how he got here in the first place. It got him his house, helped him get his family out of the hood, and let him do something he loved for a living. This play teaches us that you don't always need to take the direct route to reach a goal, and taking an indirect route just may result in something magical.
Realizes that he has probably overrun it and he can't use his glove. So I guess what do? You throw up your other hand. Got to be the play of the year.
Kevin's 1989 could only get better by bringing home his second World Series ring, and that journey began in Chicago. On October 4th, for Game 1 of the NLCS, the Giants matched up against Greg Maddux at Wrigley Field. Maddux just had his breakout season, earning a 3rd place finish in Cy Young voting. But the Giants just didn't care. They jumped him for 3 runs in the top of the 1st. The Cubs scored 2 of their own in the bottom half, then Clark and Ryan Sandberg traded solo shots in the 3rd. With 1 out in the 4th, the Giants loaded up the bases. But Maddux was 1 out away from getting out of trouble. Up stepped Will Clark.
High drive into deep right field. It is a grand slam home run.
They got to the Cubs' ace for 8 runs. Mitchell added a 3-run shot for some insurance later in the game. Him and Clark combined for 6 hits, 9 RBIs, and 3 homers. Baseball is a sport where one single player cannot will a team to victory, but the Giants' 2-man wrecking crew was enough to dominate. The Cubs didn't lay down. They came back with a 6-run first inning in Game 2, overcoming another monster game from Mitchell and evening the series. Game 3 was another back-and-forth affair, with Maddux scoring the go-ahead run as a pinch runner in the 7th. With a man out in the bottom half of the inning, Robbie Thompson stepped up to the plate. His second homer of the series ended up scoring the tying and winning runs of Game 3. Maddux got a chance at redemption in the pivotal Game 4, the 4th straight game with first inning scoring. After the Cubs brought home another run in the 2nd, Matt Williams knocked in a pair with a base hit in the 3rd. The Giants put up another run in the 4th before the Cubs sluggers tied it in the 5th. But again, Williams stepped up to the plate with a man on.
Line down the left field line in the corner. Gone. Home run.
San Francisco didn't give up the lead this time. The Giants were one win away from the World Series for the second time in 3 years, but their bats again went dormant in the potential clincher. Entering the 7th, the Cubs held on to a 1-0 lead. Will Clark then slugged the triple into right, followed by a sac fly from Mitchell. The very next inning, Clark once again stepped up to the plate with the bases loaded and 2 outs, and for the second time in the series, he delivered, knocking it a pair with a base hit. The Cubs put up a fight in the 9th, but the Giants closed out the series in 5, clinching their first pennant in over 25 years. Their World Series opponent? The #1 undisputed team in Major League Baseball, their crosstown rival Oakland Athletics. In Game 1, Mitchell and Clark picked up 4 of the team's 5 hits, as Dave Stewart threw maybe the best game of his incredible postseason career, a 138-pitch shutout. Mitchell picked up another hit in Game 2, but it was much of the same, as the Giants lost 5-1 with only 6 runners reaching base. With the series coming across the bay, the Giants couldn't afford to lose Game 3 at home.
And he fails to get Dave Parker at second base, so the Oakland A's take.
I'll tell you what, we're having an earth.
But we are. Well, folks, that's the greatest open in the history of television, bar none. Yes, it certainly did.
What are the odds? During the only Bay Area World Series matchup ever, half an hour before first pitch, a monster earthquake struck the region. It could have happened at any other time of the year, it could have happened during any other hour of the day, but it happened as millions tuned in to watch Game 3 of the 1989 World Series. Parts of the Bay Bridge and Cypress Freeway collapsed, killing 43 people. Studies estimate that the World Series saved lives, as many workers went home early in order to watch the game, alleviating the usual traffic on the bridges that collapsed. Players that were still in their uniforms found their families in the crowd and took them home right away. Thankfully, Candlestick sustained no damage and nobody was seriously hurt at the ballpark. The series was initially delayed for 5 days as both Candlestick and the Coliseum were checked for structural damage. Once they were deemed safe, Game 3 was scheduled for October 27th, 10 days after the quake and 12 days since the previous game. The A's were able to return to their ace for the second time in 3 games, and Stewart picked up his second win in 3 games, as the A's pulled away in the 5th inning of a 13-7 thumping of the Giants. In Game 4, the A's put the series to bed early, going up 8-0 and holding off the late comeback attempt sparked by a 2-run shot from Mitchell. These A's completed one of the most dominating series sweeps ever, and they would have been better remembered if the earthquake didn't overshadow their incredible performance. As for the Giants, they fell back to earth in 1990. Kevin was still an incredible hitter and earned his second straight All-Star nod, but he couldn't quite repeat his all-time great 1989. Mitchell was extended after the season for 4 years and $15 million to continue anchoring the Giants lineup. After a hot start in 91, a knee surgery sidelined Kevin for most of June, preventing him from a third straight All-Star appearance. The Giants were disappointing all year on the field, but starting in September, all hell began to break loose for Mitchell off the field.